Hi everyone, Al the Psych here. Today I have a video that's going to talk about narcissistic personalities. The information is taken from a book entitled Psychoanalytic Diagnosis. This is by Nancy McWilliams from 1994. And of course, I'll be adding my own thoughts and perspectives. So if you want the pure, uncontaminated information, then you're going to have to get the book. And it's a book I really like. I've had it for decades, and I'd kind of forgotten about it, and revisited it, and got some notes on it. So again, all the information I'm going to present is for informational purposes only. So I've got a lot of quotes, information, my perspective, like I said, so I'm going to go over that. So individuals whose personalities are organized around sustaining their self-esteem by getting affirmation from others, this is what I like to call other esteem, are called narcissistic by psychoanalysts. And I'm not going to go into DSM-5 criteria here, okay? Now, of course, we all like to get, some level of affirmation from others in our lives, but individuals with NP, I'll say NP at times for narcissistic personalities or narcissistic personality, just so we're on the same page here. So individuals with NP are like way over on the continuum, okay? If we look at this as a continuum, we're all going to have, our little narcissistic tendencies, but then, sometimes you get way over on the continuum. There is just something missing from the inner lives. That's a direct quote from the book there. Now, while individuals with NP may manifest their personas differently, you have overt and covert and malignant and self-pitying types of narcissistic personalities, and there's other types as well, depending on the work that you read. They all share a certain factor or factors. They all have this this inner sense of insufficiency, this inner sense of shame and weakness and inferiority. Even though sometimes, if you're dealing with an NP who's grandiose, you would never guess that. Okay, now the author, Nancy McWilliams, references Alice Miller, who is a Swiss psychoanalyst, and references a work from 1975, in which she reports that many families have a child that the parent or parents unconsciously exploit for the nurturance and maintenance of their parents, their own self-esteem. So usually it's the more gifted of the family children that's used as the term is as a narcissistic extension. Okay, so narcissistic extensions are needed to prop up the self-esteem of the narcissistic personalities. Okay, and in this case, it's the gifted child that is used as the narcissistic extension. Okay. Now, in the family system, with a parent that's an NP, there's also likely to be a scapegoat in the family. So you might have this gifted child who's the narcissistic extension, and then you might also have the scapegoat. So you get these polar opposites in terms of the family. That could be a whole different video. Now, one of the main concerns with individuals with NP is dealing with shame, the feelings of shame, and the fear of being shamed. Publicly being shamed, especially those are pervasive with individuals with an NP. Now, shame is different from guilt, and that shame is who I am, not what I did. Okay. Now, because NP individuals are lacking something in their inner lives, they're prone to envy. Okay, so now this is different from jealousy. I did a little video on this. I give you my take. Some of the analysts might have an issue with it, but it's my take. I'm presenting it. So in my way of thinking with envy, the NP individuals, they may want what you have and don't mind being hurtful to get it, or at least, stopping you from keeping it, as opposed to jealousy, which is when they want something similar to what you have, or something like what you have. So very different definitions here in terms of envy versus jealousy. Okay. Now, in terms of defense mechanisms, NPs are using primitive defense mechanisms. They rely routinely on idealization and devaluation. So when the self is idealized, others are devalued, okay? And then vice versa. Okay, there's a lot of splitting and extremes going on here. So I may have this inner sense of grandiosity, or I may project it on to another depending upon the circumstances. Now, the author references Heinz Kohut, his work from 1971, who indicates that NP individuals are constantly in a ranking process. Okay, so who's the best doctor? What is the best preschool? So now think narcissistic extension. Okay, how will my child going to the most prestigious preschool reflect upon me? Okay, so it's that kind of mindset. Now, let's just say that the child does not get into the most prestigious preschool for some reason. What happens? Okay, now that preschool becomes devalued. Okay, the parent now finds flaws and cracks in what was once considered the best preschool. So what was once considered the best preschool is now knocked off the pedestal, takes a dive, and now the second best preschool now becomes the best preschool. So you see how that works. Now, NPs often get caught up in concerns of perfectionism. So they hold themselves up to unrealistic ideals and either convince themselves that they have attained them, the grandiose outcome, or respond to their falling short by feeling inherently flawed rather than forgivably human. That's the way the author puts it. And this would be the depressive outcome. So interesting, how you can get these extremes going on. Now, finally, NP, like I said previously, NPs tend to use primitive defense mechanisms such as idealization and devaluation. So an NP might deal with their self-esteem issue by regarding somebody else as perfect and then feeling inflated by identification with that person. So the NP is like an appendage of the idealized person who supposedly can do no wrong. And unfortunately, nobody is perfect. Okay, so this often plays out in therapy sessions. Okay, in which the therapist is, in the course of therapy, is often idealized, but then devalued when the patient or client feels devalued in therapy in some way. Okay, disrespected, devalued, however. Now, this is actually really a good time to make some therapeutic headway by addressing this issue of how the client is disappointed with the therapist. Okay, so put another way, say the therapist has not provided enough empathy and the client is having to struggle with regulating his or her own self-esteem. And I can get into this in a little more detail in a different video. But I remember I adopted a statement that my supervisor from decades ago told me. It was directed to the client. So when I felt like I was being idealized, I would say, "How am I going to disappoint you?" And this would often open up a very interesting dialogue, and potentially leading to some therapeutic gains. But yeah, I thought it was a great kind of statement. How am I going to disappoint you? Stated from the therapist's perspective. So that is it for this video. Like I said, I'll get some other information out there. There's so much information out there in terms of narcissism. I've got a book that I've read that I'll probably go over that one, and then some other ideas as well, talking about how sometimes the narcissist might feel a little wounded in therapy, and how to get past that. Okay, so for now, that is it, and see you later.